So without cheating, look away from your screen right now, cover it up, don't look at it. I want to ask you a question. So when I say the names Detroit Lions and Washington Redskins, which one do you think is a controversy over the name? If you guessed Washington Redskins, you're absolutely correct, and if you looked at your computer, you're still absolutely correct. And so what we're going to be talking about today is mascot controversy, but specifically looking at the Washington Redskins and also just taking a look at a solution I think that is good for this and my stance on it, and see how it can help other teams that have Native American names or imagery in them, and help to decide how to settle these disputes that people have among this. So let's dive right into it. So let's go into the opposing claim from mine. So the owner of the Washington Redskins, Dan Snyder, said the Washington Redskins team, our fans, and community have always believed our name represents honor, respect, and pride. And so if you're not familiar, the term Redskins is something that is controversial amongst people. I'm trying to decide if it's a racist term, if it's something that is dehumanizing to people, specifically to Native Americans. And what he's saying is that right here, it's something that is it's supposed to be a positive name, and I completely understand where he's coming from right there. However, we're going to dive into my claim on this later. The Washington Post conducted a poll that said that 9 in 10 Native Americans aren't offended by the Washington Redskins name. This poll was published on May 19th of 2016. And this poll also said 8 in 10 Native Americans in that poll said that they wouldn't be offended if a non-Native American called them that name. So keep that in mind as we go forward. So the ramifications of that claim. So the Washington Redskins continue to keep the name Redskins, as Dan Snyder has talked about the name. In fact, he has gone on to say that we'll never change the name. And also, apart from Snyder, there are also others that do support the name Redskins. There are Native Americans that do support the name Redskins. And however, that there are those that do support the name, there are also others that are still opposed to it even after the poll came out. And also, the Dan Snyder quote that I showed earlier, I'm not sure if that's one that came out after this most recent poll came out. But it's something that I do want to show that he takes the term Redskins as a positive thing. So my claim is that if a majority of Native Americans find it offensive, it should change. And so what I mean by that is that, well, lots of people of all races, and we should be debating this honestly, it really is, what really comes down to it is whether we're for or against having the name Redskins. It really is up to what the majority of Native Americans feel about it. And so there probably isn't any harm, honestly, on the part of the Redskins or their fans or anybody that supports keeping the name when they use it or they think of it. However, there are Native Americans that should be the ones determining this, because this is about them. These are people that have been oppressed in the past, and the images that are and the names that are used of them may not be something that they want to necessarily represent them, because they don't really think it represents them. In fact, I have a quote right here from James Barraford, and he tweeted, I am a human being, not a marketing group. Excuse me. It's not a marketing prop, excuse me. And so while Redskins may look at maybe seen as a positive thing when Dan Snyder describes it, or maybe other people as well, James Barraford right here, he still thinks that it's kind of dehumanizing him in a way. And so and also another quote to go right here, Tara Houska, she says that we are not mascots, and that's something else to keep in mind too, also how some Native Americans feel about this. And so what I think the best solution to go about this is, the most fair way to go about it is through a vote of every qualified Native American for this vote to determine which Native Americans' names or images should stay and which should go. And that's if any, maybe they should all go. And I think that the best way to go about that is through a vote. Now we're going to look at how we can contrast my position from the opposing claim earlier, supporting and keeping the Washington Redskins name. And so it's important to keep in mind that the Washington Post poll that was conducted most recently, it's not a perfect showing of how all Native Americans feel on this matter. And so there is a margin of sampling error for overall results that was included in the article showing the poll, and the poll asked lots of different questions and had lots of different data involving different things. And I'm going to show you one of the most important statistics from that poll later on. But just keep in mind though that the number of people that were interviewed for this, as Tara Houska, that I have listed down here, who is a tribal lawyer and a member of the Couchiching First Nation in Canada. She questioned the poll by the Washington Post because she said that the small number of people surveyed could not hardly represent the feelings of 5.2 million Native Americans. And I'm not sure if she was referencing Native Americans just in the U.S. or in North America, but we need to keep in mind that just the small sample size that was interviewed by the Washington Post can't represent how a majority of Native Americans feel. And so, also looking at this, some people say it's a slur still, and I'm not sure if they still say it's a slur even after Dan Snyder had made those comments saying that like it's representing honor and all this stuff right here, but it still can honestly still be used referenced as a slur. And so we're going to be looking at the Washington Post poll right here. And so the professional football, this is the question that was asked, one of the questions that was asked, one of the most important questions in my opinion of this whole poll, and it said, the professional football team in Washington calls itself the Washington Redskins. As a Native American, do you find that name offensive, or doesn't it bother you? And this is out of total Native Americans, both in tribes and not in tribes. 9% found it offensive, 90% it didn't bother them, and 1% had no opinion. There was a lot more information on there. This is just one of the questions. And so while it does like there's overwhelming support to say, you would say like, oh wow, Native Americans, I mean we should keep the name. I mean only 9% of them are offended by it, but we need to keep in mind it didn't ask do you support it? Are you in favor of keeping this? And I think that we need to keep that in mind and not raise a flag to keeping the names. And so my conclusion on this matter is that while I personally think it is offensive, it's not really up to me in order to keep it. I think since it references Native Americans, it needs to be kept. It needs to be voted on by Native Americans in order to find that out, and whether or not we should keep the Washington Redskins name as well as other teams that have Native American imagery and team names. So these are my works cited. Thank you very much.